The story of Moses parting the Red Seas is not true, and also is true. The story of the parting of the Red Seas is not factual. It does not need to be true to be believed. If you need it to be true to be believed, you are incapable of belief. Belief requires the leap from truth to myth. It requires the understanding that myth is important, even in the world of truth. Moses did not part the Red Seas. So what did Moses do? What is the story meant to tell you you are capable of? Because you are Moses in this story. It is not a true factual story about a man named Moses. It is about you in your situations in life. So what does it mean to part the Red Seas? An impossibility. What it means to part the Red Seas is to hold in truth two opposites. To part the Red Seas means to live within a paradox. To part the Red Seas means this can be entirely true and realized, and its opposite can be entirely true and realized. And I am the conduit, the space between them. The greater I allow each truth to be, its size and scope, while allowing them to be separate truths, the greater the space between them. When I am incapable of holding them as two truths in opposition, when I feel they have to be one, it is this or that, they collapse, there is no space. That is anxiety, hate, blame, stupidity. It is the state of living in this. To part the Red Seas, to create the space for the expansiveness of your being, is to hold opposites in truth. For example, the story of Moses and the Red Seas is not true. It did not happen. And it is true. The fable, holding two opposites in truth, can be a truth in your life, which leads to the feeling of parting the Red Seas, leads to you looking back and saying, at one point in my life, this was an ocean impossible to pass, impossible to swim through, too big, too vast, too empty. But I made space to traverse it by creating a wall that by all other measures should collapse in upon themselves. But my ability to hold two separate, paradoxical, contradictory truths as equals allowed my might to come forth. That is the story of the Red Seas. Why does the story of the Red Seas matter at all? Because this is a structure. It is a pyramid. It is a temple. It is an algorithm. It is a satellite dish. It is irrigation matrices. It is a structure which transports resources. It moves in oxygen and releases carbon dioxide as part of a vast, vascular system between trees and mammals and other creatures. That is a singular thing that we allow to flow through the structure. Food, blood, it is flowing through the structure. Those are literal biological mechanisms of the structure. What else does the structure do? The structure has the capacity to take potential energy, an idea, belief, a wish, a feeling, and create action in the real world. It can do that. It can realize things. It is a structure to do that. So, having your structure aligned and in tune so that it can send out the greatest amplification of signal, receive the greatest amplification of signal, and can send a pure signal, leads to the expansiveness, the joy, the harmony, the divine of life. En masse, humans are now 8 billion of these structural amplification mechanisms. They are haywire. Each one is bleeding, sending out constant signals of all different reactions and intentions in the belief that it is individual or that its group is individual compared to another group. There is no singular cooperation or harmony between human beings on a systemic level, which means we will kill ourselves. The size of the system we've just created in the last 100 years, 8 billion units. If it is not in tune with the system that provides for it, it will destroy that system. We individually have that much power. The fundamental belief that we have yet to part and walk through like the Red Sea, that has been with us from the beginning, the origin of Homo sapiens, 500,000 years ago, 1 million years ago, that long, this kernel has been there, that only through conflict do I survive. Only through taking more than I give do I survive. Throughout the entirety of human civilization, that thought was required for survival. It is embedded in us, and it is untrue. It is a falsehood in the current world. It may have been true for a long time. It is no longer true. But most of us have that program in us as a base level of, well, that's true. And most of our cultures, traditions, nations, even ethnicities are built on that concept. Protection of tribe, protection of unit or group as a means to protection of individual. That is not any longer how we will survive. That is now how we will kill ourselves. We have such size as a species now that we will have to fundamentally operate as a cooperative with nature, with ourselves. To operate as a cooperative without any political or ideological association. A deep fundamental belief that needs can be met through mutual exchange, that conflict can even be a form of cooperation. Conflict can be a form of cooperation. If the deep-seated fundamental idea in a human being is that we can all be together in the same thing, all our needs can be met. I don't have to kill or take from you in order to survive. That's a possibility to put in here. But in order for that to be true, and any time in history we've gotten even close to that, it's tipped right into the same thing as everything else. Authoritarianism, top-down structures, ideas, roles. The only way to maintain this is also its opposite, complete and total internal harmonization in alignment with the individual. So that each individual is humming and buzzing its most pure truth, amplified fully. If that were to occur, we would not see a bunch of human beings saying the same words, chanting the same thing, believing the same things. It would not mean an abandonment of difference or discernment. It would mean the opposite. It would mean a flourishing of diversity. It would mean human beings as wide-ranging as a rose in a buffalo. In every fashion possible, beyond anything we've conceived of so far as difference or culture or color or art or story. Creations beyond anything we've come up with. If we were to allow every individual to fully attune itself. In order for every individual to attune itself, to have an opposite to everything being cooperation, so that we create the space of that paradox, we must first all individually confront and reject all the projections that have been put upon us as far as how we code ourselves. I am this, I am that, I am from here, I belong to these people, this is what we think, this is what we say. That all individually has to be seen and understood as something put there, either by history, culture, genetics, something outside. And that rejecting it does not mean necessarily abandoning it, certainly not necessarily harming it or cutting it down. It doesn't mean changing who you are in terms of who you associate with or the name of your group. Nothing has to be eradicated or erased. All that can exist upon this other fundamental change. Only after first seeing all of those. In learning, you can choose them. When you can address everything that's been projected upon you, you can become attuned individually. And once you're attuned individually, you have realized that truth enough to hold the paradox of also being in a cooperative, fully, an 8 billion unit cooperative structure amplifying thoughts into actions. At the same time as a completely, totally autonomous individual, translating thoughts into actions for its needs and desires. That is possible. If you believe, you can live in a paradox. If you can live in the space between contradictions. If you can believe, opposites can be true. If you can believe and not believe, whatever it is. That is the story of the Red Sea. And you, whoever you are Moses. That is true. Seahorse Tiger. Let's get risky.